The Tbilisi entrance halls are a cultural highlight of Georgia, and as urbanism gains more fans, they're becoming increasingly popular. In this episode, we'll take a walk through the most beautiful ones.
We are probably in one of the most beautiful entrance halls in the city. This building was constructed in 1904. That date is indicated on the facade on the third floor. Its owner was a certain Shalva Abazov, a fishery industrialist.
Our guide through the Tbilisi entrance halls today will be one of the city's most extraordinary guides, a collector and historian, Georgi. We begin our walk at the most ornate and well-preserved entrance hall, located at 93A Machabeli. This is the center of Tbilisi, a promenade, so the building itself has been restored. Since the building belonged to the fishery industrialist Abazov, you can see mermaids in the stucco decorations on the facade. Inside, guests are greeted by hand-painted frescoes depicting the continents.
So here you can find Russia, America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and Russia again. It should be noted that this is not really a separate continent or part of the world, but even now it occupies a sixth of the landmass, and back then it was even more, so it is highlighted as something distinct. The upper right corner, as if it were golden domed. Below it is the western part of the empire, and to the left, accordingly, is the central part. Below, of course, it has swelled somewhat, but judging by these mountains, that's the Caucasus. Moreover, judging by the almost grotesquely swollen minaret of the Caucasus, more likely the North Caucasus, and accordingly, Tbilisi is behind these mountains in the South Caucasus. The next picture is America. I keep confusing them because here it's Fem. It looks like the letter F stylized as a huge black spot, the Industrial Revolution. Because where is it in America? Pay attention over there. A ship frozen in the ice. The next picture is Europe. Again, from the inscription itself, it's not particularly clear. The letters are so stylized, so interwoven with each other. But in any case, you can guess from the picture itself, because the cathedral, now and then, at least somewhat resembles Notre Dame in Paris. Then there are the ladies, representing the old world, and then books, symbolizing the capital of world education. Of that time, and in fact, the world's first steam fleet. Asia, camels. Africa, accordingly, elephants, although here they look a bit faded as well. And Australia, the most interesting continent, is depicted in the most allegorical way because at that time it was the least explored continent. So Asia, camels, Africa, elephants, and Australia, some kind of strange, fantastical creatures, like firebirds and generally other unknown animals. Because apparently the artist had never been to Australia. His name, by the way, was Benedict Rafailovich Talingaitor. On the plaque here at the entrance, it says that he was Jewish, which is partly true because his mother was a Jewish woman from Odessa, and that's where he was born. But his father was, in fact, Azerbaijani.
Benedict Talingaitor, unfortunately no photographs of him have survived, was a well-known theatrical artist, graphic artist, and satirist of his time. In the early 1920s, he also created a series of charity postage stamps for the Azerbaijan SSR called To Aid the Starving in the Volga Region. By the way, I'm curious, let me know in the comments, would you like to have such an entrance hall in your apartment building today?
The ceiling here, it's worth noting, is made of paper. It hasn't been preserved in the best condition. Restoration work was started on it, but there were also some ceiling-related issues, there was some help, and so on. What's really rare is that all of this is decorated all the way up to the third floor. People had both the money and the taste to afford such luxury. Here's this lamppost. And it's worth mentioning because it's actually not the original one. Because the post that once adorned this entrance hall was much more ornate. On the upper floors of these, mostly income-generating buildings, the owners themselves usually lived. And of course, there used to be more traces of that here. And there used to be more light here. Firstly, because the hook on the ceiling for a huge chandelier is now without a chandelier. And another detail, the skylight used to let in basically more light.
The mansion's area is over 500 square meters. It was built according to the design of Corneli Tatishchov. It's hard to get into the entrance. The residents have installed a coded lock. By the way, did you notice how naturally Georgi blended into the interior? By the way, the historical outfit isn't a costume for filming. It's his usual style, which the historian has been devoted to for several years now.
My nickname at university was the Old One. Not just, I should say, because of my clothes, but also because of my interests. Overall, I'm a collector. I really love paper items. All of this, of course, has roots that go deep, deep into my childhood. Back then, I collected almost everything, and all the grandmothers sitting on the benches by the entrance would bring me coins. Once, a long time ago, I found a photograph of my grandfather among my old things. Again, nothing special, just a classic photograph. He was a man of the old generation, my grandfather from Rugino, that is, my father's father. He was a teacher, the principal of our school in the district in Martveli. In general, he was considered part of the local intelligentsia. I found a photograph of him wearing a hat. In fact, I later found the hat itself as well, and all of this really struck a chord with me. I thought, oh, let me try on my grandfather's hat. And so, for the first time in my life, I walked around the city wearing a hat.
At the Dry Bridge, the main flea market in Varissa, collector Georgi is a frequent guest. Everyone here knows him.
Good afternoon, everyone, Batadavas, and also a very warm welcome to Chigiro. I marry every day, don't you know?
To the future president, physical education. Hello, how are you, brother Mike? You will be president, but I don't know of which country. I don't know yet either, but I know that you will be. I'll let you know when I become one, all right, brother?
Watch this video until the end, and I'll give you a list of the most beautiful entrance halls in Tbilisi. The rich decor makes you want to examine every detail, but we need to move on. According to urbanists' estimates, there are about 100 decorative entrance halls in Tbilisi in varying states of preservation. So if we devote 5 minutes of airtime to each, the film would last an entire day. After all, each has its own story. The names of the building's architects, the artists, the fates of the owners, and distinguished guests.
The street where the house of the fishery owner, Mr. Abazov, pardon me, in that era, stood. Before the revolution, it was called Mikhailovsky Prospect. Directly on the side of this house, what about it? As the plaque says, this was exactly where the old German church once stood. So the street that runs this way used to be Mikhailovskaya, and the perpendicular street, which is now Kote Marjanishvili, named after a very famous Georgian theater director, was once called Kirochnaya.
Meanwhile, we've come to a luxurious mansion on Lado Asatiani Street, which boasts an equally magnificent entrance hall. It's unlikely you'll be able to get in here on your own, but that's not the case for us.
We're on the third floor, the top floor of this house, where the owner, Rastavanovich Chavchanidze, actually lived. That's why the entrance hall here is the most lavishly decorated, and moreover, it's also adorned with the initials of the very owner. They're right here on the ceiling. In Russian, though, it says Aksh, but in Georgian, E and E are the same letter, so let's chalk it up to a translation inaccuracy. Let's put it that way. And here's another very interesting little detail. This is the original old nameplate on the door from pre-revolutionary times, precisely with the name of Mr. Chavchanidze, Erast Rastavanovich Nitsali. And the same thing is duplicated here in the corner in Georgian. Mr. Gio Janidze himself was never a Tbilisi native. He was born in Koni, which is in western Georgia. Tiflis. His parents sent him, and not to study as was common among the wealthy, but to work. Because he wasn't from a wealthy family to begin with. He got a job here at a small bakery, and in his free time from work, he helped a German volunteer and some nearby shops with errands. This German became so attached to the hard-working little boy, who essentially grew up before his eyes, that later on, in addition to all sorts of other things, thank you. He even paid for his education in Leipzig. And so, flipping through a few pages of Mr. Chavchanidze's biography, here he is already a first guild merchant, a patron of the arts, a philanthropist. After spending a long time in Europe, he dreamed of building a house in Tiflis upon his return that would rival the finest homes in London and Paris. It must be said, he managed to do this, but not in 1903. As it says on the plaque at the bottom of the facade, and in 1906, the story becomes entirely Soviet. Some guys with red flags came to Uncle Chevchenidze and said, "What was yours is now ours." They were going to settle him almost under the stairs, but fortunately someone stood up for him and he was able to keep at least a couple of rooms from his former apartment. All the rest was filled up with new tenants. And now, it must be said, they own exactly the same area as they did before the revolution. Because his great-grandson, that is Tamarich's son, slowly but surely, bought back the rooms one by one from the Soviet-era neighbors who had moved in after the collapse of the Union. Thus, he restored the family to the same space they had occupied in Tsarist times, as I mentioned before.
The Chevchenidze house is built in the eclectic style characteristic of that era. It is richly decorated with ornamental elements and stucco.
And the most interesting detail about this house is that on its third floor, where the original owner once lived, his granddaughter, Tamaricha Chevchenidze, currently resides. She's just over 80 years old. This is quite rare because the owners often emigrated. And even more so, their descendants. And that's in the best case scenario. Ceiling paintings were often preserved, especially on the upper floors, because Soviet painters were too lazy to reach up there. I've mentioned this before. The residents themselves, realizing that they were living in museums, in one sense or another, often tried to defend and protect these paintings, sometimes resorting to bribes. Whether it was a tenner or a bottle of vodka, to some painter from the housing maintenance office.
A couple of blocks from here, also in the city center, we'll find the income house of the timber industrialist Jigitian.
A Marchak. Well, hello there. Hello to you all. It's closed.
But a good guide always has codes and passwords. By the way, I've left Georgie's contact information in the video description.
Here's an artifact like this. It's full of bookmarks because I use it a lot during my tours. This is a guidebook to Tiflis from 1913. Actually, that's the era I mostly focus on during my tours. I have to say, it wasn't meant to survive to this day, if only because 60 kopecks was, so to speak. You bought it, used it, gave it away, sold it, threw it out, whatever you wanted. In other words, it was a cheap publication by the standards of that time. So here you have a list, figuratively speaking, of shops, routes, prices for meat and trams, and so on, and schedules. In short, everything you need to know upon arriving in Tiflis in 2013. So in the list of factories and plants. Sawmills, the very first ones, Jigishins on Mandatovsky Island. Now, I should say there are neither sawmills nor Mandatovsky Island anymore, nor is there Jigishin himself. Geographically, Mandatovsky Island was located roughly where the present-day dry bridge is, where, for what seems like ages, there were sawmills, the majority of which by the end of the 19th century belonged to Mr. Jigishin, who lived in this very house. And in particular,
the individual prominently featured in the venerable and well-preserved old guidebook, specifically identified as the masterful creator and artistic force behind these captivating and historically significant murals, is none other than a distinguished artist by the name of Jan Poznan. His authentic and unmistakable autograph, serving as irrefutable proof of his authorship and artistic presence, is clearly visible and meticulously preserved right here within this very space, offering a direct connection to the artist himself. Jan Poznan, a highly acclaimed and exceptionally talented Polish artist, left an indelible mark on the art world with his distinctive style and profound artistic vision, contributing significantly to the cultural heritage of his time. The signature, a crucial testament to his presence and artistic endeavor, is precisely dated to the year 1911, providing a vital historical anchor for these remarkable works of art and solidifying their provenance within a specific period of artistic creation. This precise dating further enhances our understanding of the historical context surrounding these captivating murals, offering valuable insights into the artistic landscape of that era and the specific period in which Poznan was actively engaged in creating these masterpieces, thereby enriching our appreciation of their enduring legacy.
the author of these murals is Jan Poznan, whose autograph is here. He was a Polish artist, and the signature is dated 1911. But he is not considered the author of the murals, but the concept behind them. Alexander Jegetian, here they are, not typical for a European city of that time. That is, usually these are subjects like, say, the seasons or maybe some children with peaches, cherubs, figuratively speaking, and things like that. But here there are some high mountain ridges with little hedgehogs and shepherds. But this is explained by the fact that the person considered to be the author of the concept and the murals themselves is Mr. Jigetian, because he was originally from Karabakh, an Armenian from Karabakh. And they say that the artist, he has to capture the landscapes from basically his childhood. In Russian, it says, Day of the election of the Supreme Soviet of the Georgian SSR. So this is really from the 1930s. The voting, as I understand it, took place right here around the perimeter because all the autographs and pencil scribbles are mostly from the 1930s. Like, for example, this one, September 20th, 1930. In this entryway, one of my favorite acts of vandalism is preserved. Perhaps it's a stylization of the pre-revolutionary past, but in any case, the scribble is topped with a hard sign, which at the time was called Yer. Much more interesting is the crossed-out autograph above it. This is the autograph of Jigitian. Wait, that's the owner's last name? Maybe Sanishka was the one who did it?
From the ornate painting and the wrought iron staircase, you can only imagine what a grand impression this entrance once made. Now though, the space is quite dark, with a broken front door. Overall, the building is in need of serious repairs.
The extensive restoration work almost reached this historic building, primarily because in order for such a significant undertaking to truly happen, official signatures from absolutely every single resident were unequivocally required. But a couple of residents objected, because the restoration, in order to reinforce the foundations, would have required the floors to be opened up. And they had just finished renovating. Let's get out of here.
Tbilisi entrance halls are, of course, a cultural and historical phenomenon that emerged at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries thanks to the fashion for displaying success and status. Fishery owners, merchants, and landowners competed in the beauty, grandeur, and luxury of their homes. And the vain race did not pass by the tobacco manufacturers, the Seylanov brothers either.
In one of the old Tiflis newspapers, this particular one is from 1912, among the endless advertisements and posters, those very Seylanov brothers are mentioned, with their huge, one of the largest tobacco factories in the Caucasus. In the end, it was a tobacco factory. We had already been in the entrance hall, which was built, if not exactly, then at least approximately the same way, the same continents and the same so-called parts of the world. Again, Russia, America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and no Australia. Because in the place of Australia, which was there, and I have to say it was exactly the same as in one of the previous entrance halls. In the 1930s, during the era of the race for square meters, a door was ruthlessly punched through.
The building was constructed in 1911. The marble floor of the entrance hall was created by craftsmen from the Adrialetti company. The wall decor features pre-revolutionary paper wallpaper, which has miraculously survived to this day. As Zoya, a lifelong resident who has lived here for over 40 years, says, restoration helped. How do you manage to keep it in such pristine condition?
No, this is made from a sheet of varchu. Yes, it is. About 5
or 6 years ago. Don't you get tired of tourists who come by? Well,
don't say the name. There are a lot of them. Well, what can you do? It's beautiful. People have to see it.
And one last question. Have you ever wanted to move away from here? Maybe, since it's really the city center, it's noisy, there are tourists?
No. I'm so used to it, I just can't leave it all. And we have such good neighbors. On the second floor. The neighbors are so nice that I really don't want to leave.
We're very interested in a couple of fascinating artifacts, so we're heading over there. There are the beautiful ornate balconies right over there.
Yes, that's right, those are the ones. Really, those are the ones.
Basically, this is pretty much exactly the spot where that photo was taken. The inscription on the building. The London Hotel, once the best hotel, not just in Tiflis, but in the entire Caucasus.
At the turn of the century, the hotel was so progressive that reservations were booked several months in advance. For example, this is where the first phonograph listening sessions by Thomas Edison were held in Tbilisi in 1890, the building's glass ceiling was considered innovative for its time, creating a play of light.
The building of what was once the most luxurious hotel, not just in Tiflis, but in the entire Caucasus. Under the name London, it was for a long time and remained afterwards the only hotel of European standard. In a sense, it was a city-forming enterprise because many of the city's hotels, especially those scattered around the perimeter of the London Hotel, were fully booked. largely because the London hotel itself was always fully booked.
Among the guests of Tiflis's London hotel were Piotr Ostrovsky, the Norwegian writer Knut Hamsun, and the Minister of State Property at the time, Mikhail Ostrovsky.
Built in 1875, it belonged to one of the wealthiest Tiflis merchants of that era, a certain Konstantin Yakovlevich Zubalov, whose original surname in Georgian was Zubalov. The architect of this building was a German, a certain Otto Jakob Simonsen, who was also the hotel manager. For a long time, the family, the Richters, also Germans. In the same travel guide, in the list of Tiflis hotels, the London is listed first. Baths, telephone, and so on. A reading room, excellent cuisine, a lovely garden with a view of the Kura River. During the heat, it was very cool here, which was always extremely important for Tiflis residents. With the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, this building was converted into a hospital. It was equipped with everything necessary for 20,000 rubles. The next repurposing of the hotel was in 1923, already under Soviet rule, when the central house of the peasant was quartered here. In modern terms, roughly speaking, it's like a multifunctional center. It remained here until 1950, when a police station was established in the building. And in the cellars, where once the finest wines of Europe and beyond were stored, prisoners' testimonies began to be extracted. From the 1960s, a communal apartment was finally set up in this building, and it was settled precisely by those same representatives of the authorities. And now, in a sense, this building is a multifunctional complex, because part of it is still a communal apartment with old residents. Part of it is a hotel, in the sense that some people rent out their apartments here. And almost the entire first floor, of course, is commercial. That is, there are some small shops, and just recently a coffee shop opened here. The restoration has been completed. It was finished about 3 years ago. And I have to say, this is one of those rare cases when, after restoration, the entrance hall did not lose its pre-restoration charm.
Exploring the entrance halls in Tbilisi is an endlessly fascinating activity because every building has its own story, names, destinies, owners, artists and guests, curious features and symbolism. We're leaving you the addresses so that, if you get the chance, you can personally explore the beauty of the entrance halls in the Georgian capital. Well, that's all for today. I'm saying goodbye to you. Bye!